Good morning. Welcome, 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 welcome. 1,000 welcomes. And we are meditating today on the fantastic subject, which I'll give us a number of entry points into. Surrender. So just what does surrender mean? And how does one practice surrender? And what arises if we are able to surrender? And I want to also acknowledge there's maybe a gap to leap across many times, because I think that our culture is one that is not necessarily always dedicated to this spiritual concept of surrender. And so we'll also be tuning into, it's important as well to have the awareness that we began meditating on. So Buddha said, be aware, choose wisely. That's also extremely important. So be aware, choose wisely, do everything that it is humanly and divinely possible to do, and then surrender. And so what does that mean to surrender? So one thing to notice is that the word for surrender in Sanskrit, I'm going to be quoting from the Bhagavad Gita, but also from Buddhist teachings as well. That word can also translate as take refuge in. So surrender to the divine also simply means take refuge in the divine. So in the Buddhist tradition, when you take refuge in the Buddha, when you take refuge in the community, when you take refuge in the teachings of truth, you are surrendering. It's the same word. Another way to translate that is, I'm abiding in the divine. I'm abiding in awakeness. I'm abiding in the community. I'm abiding in the truth. I'm abiding in the eternal sweetness with full awareness. And so that's one reason why I began by quoting the Buddha, saying, be aware, choose wisely. So every one of us always is invited to be aware and choose wisely and abide in the eternal. Abide in awakeness, abide in what is highest and best, abide in sweetness, abide in what it is that we love, abide in what we would love to help become visible in time and space. So I'm going to share with you very quickly a couple of teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, and then a couple of really practical, vivid daily examples. And then I'm going to invite us to feel this directly within ourselves. So the Bhagavad Gita, I'm quoting 2 verses from chapter 18. And chapter 18 is the final chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, and it has this kind of culminating sort of crescendo, like everything comes together in chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. And so one of the teachings is this: take refuge in the divine with all thy heart, mind, and being. By grace, thou shalt attain supreme peace and reach the eternal abode. Another way to translate that is surrender to the divine with all thy heart, mind, and being. By grace, thou shalt attain supreme peace and reach the eternal abode. Another way to approach that is abide. Always be connected with the divine, with thy heart, mind, and being. And we all know, if we let ourselves be connected with the divine, with our heart, mind, and being, we know how that feels. And we know we don't actually have to wait to leave the body to reach supreme peace and the eternal abode. We're able to walk around in the body, being supreme peace and being in the eternal abode. Wow, how amazing is that? And so that's what we're invited to do. We contact that when we come together in community, when we meditate together, we feel that. We feel very purely and perfectly, beautifully, that energy of effortlessness, that energy of love, that sort of sigh of relief, that awareness, everything's okay. It is actually okay. And we're invited to, from moment to moment, allow all of those moments to form a necklace that becomes continuous and unbroken, so that our continuous, unbroken awareness is that supreme peace always. And we're invited simply to be that in embodiment, in our human form, in our human lives and work and relationships. And then a couple of verses later in the Bhagavad Gita, the teaching says, take refuge in the divine alone, fear not. And so when we take refuge in the divine, fear also melts away. And that's another indicator. So if fear is arising, that means we're invited to reconnect with the divine. And when we reconnect with the divine, then the fear melts away. Another way to translate that verse, take refuge in the divine, grieve not. And so sorrow will also melt away when we connect with the divine. And so not to be impatient with yourself if you are experiencing sorrow or if you are experiencing grief. It is something that we move through when we're moving through time and space. There's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with anyone else. So be patient and kind with yourself and love yourself forward through that experience, and also know that it is immediately possible to connect with balm, with pure healing balm, the balm of true eternal kindness and awareness and love. And we can give ourselves that connectedness instantly. And then as we connect with that, that is able to share through us as well. So I'm going to share with you, I guess I can't resist this one teaching from Lahiri. So he's telling us it really matters where we place our focus and our attention. Going back to what the Buddha said, be aware, choose wisely. So part of being aware is choosing, where do I want to place my focus and my attention? We're not saying be ignorant. We're not saying be unaware. We're saying be aware and wise at the same time. And so the way that Lahiri puts this is, if you abide in Brahman, you will go to Brahman. So if you abide in the Supreme, you will go to the Supreme. If you put attachment-filled attention in another direction, you will go there. So there's some humor there. There's some honesty. Thank you, Lahiri, but there's also some humor. So we all know how that feels. And so this is where we get to start to, pretty soon I'll invite us to start playing with this. We can do it instantly right now. Like, place your attention in the Supreme. So place your attention in the feeling of direct connection with the sweetness of divine love. Just notice, it's instantly there. It's so present and so beautiful. And so give yourself permission to abide in that connection with the Supreme, with the sweetness of the feeling of love that's always present in your heart, in your soul. And notice how peaceful it feels, and how the energy of victory of soul is right there. And then we're able to navigate waves of change that come in time and space. And we're able to do this knowing that those waves of change that come in time and space are also a gift of the Supreme. And we're able to encounter waves of change in time and space as a gift of the Supreme when we are connected with this truth, with this sweetness, with this reality. Okay, and then attachment-filled attention. Lahiri says, if you put attachment-filled attention in another direction, you will go there. Do we need to practice that, or is that already clear? Okay, so I see people saying, nope, we've got that one. We have awareness, so we won't practice that. But just to be aware, maybe let yourself be aware with humor. Where has my attachment-filled attention been wanting to lead me? That is other than this energy of sweetness and truth and connectedness. And so just notice. And what would happen if, instead of allowing my attachment-filled attention to lead me in that direction, I sent a beam of light in that direction instead? Notice it is actually possible to do that. You don't have to ask yourself how to do that. You can just send a beam of light in the direction of your attachment-filled attention, and the light will help bring resolution. The light will help bring peace. Okay, so I'm going to give a couple of vivid examples, and then we'll practice this a little bit more. So earlier this week, I was on my way to work, and I drove through a school crossing shortly before school let out. And so the scenario is the crossing guard is already on the ready. So the crossing guard is there, and she's got her like neon vest on, and she's got her stop sign on, and she's like at at attention. She is so present and so aware. And between her and the schoolyard, and I'm driving through this corridor, between her and the schoolyard, in her consciousness and her presence, she has opened up a corridor of light. I actually drove through this corridor of light, and it was simply her presence. It was simply her being there in the midst of her daily walk, her daily tasks, her daily life. She was aware and she was caring. And there was an actual corridor of light in consciousness that was open between her and the schoolyard. And those kids, when they got out of school, they were going to walk through this corridor of light. Can you imagine how precious that is? How pure, how potent. And we all are doing that all the time. That was just how she was doing it in her daily walk and her daily life. So the power and the presence and the potency of the way we direct our energy, our attention, our focus, it is pure, and it creates effects in time and space. So those beautiful kids, they were going to tumble out of school. Like I was there right in that moment of silence before the school bell rang and the kids came tumbling out. And their energy and their exuberance and their gladness and their sort of like, I'm greeting this day of sunshine and love and laughter. They were going to be in this corridor of light that she had pre-paved for them by her energy, her attentiveness, her awareness. We all do this all the time. And in a second, I'm going to tell a couple more stories. I'm going to invite us to connect with this and then to energize this, because it is amazing and it changes our lives and the world when we engage with this consciously. So I have a couple stories from a doctor. They're also contemporary stories, true stories. And one of them, this is an example of Lahiris reminder with total good humor. If you put attachment-filled attention in another direction, you will go there. So this doctor, he was giving himself like a teaching that is this in action. He was about to go on a 2-week vacation. And the last time he had gone to this particular place on a vacation, he had been 16. And right before he went to that place on vacation when he was 16, he broke his glasses. So the doctor thought, oh, the last time I went on vacation, I was 16 and I broke my glasses. He literally dropped his glasses and they shattered right then. So the more clear, bless you, the more clear we become, the more important it becomes to be directing our attention in the direction of the Supreme and in the direction of what we want to create and energize, and not in the direction of what we would prefer not to create and energize. So the same doctor, he's obviously giving himself like a review session of this teaching. He gets back from vacation and he thinks to himself, okay, I'm just back from vacation. I need to be very, very careful, because often when I come back from vacation, I'm tired and I get in an accident. So not only did he get in an accident with his car, it wasn't like a terrible accident, but it required some body work, like on his car, required some paint work, required that he exchange insurance information with the other person who was also very kind and said, these things happen, don't they, sometimes? He also got in a bicycle accident. And so then he's sitting there, he has a broken kneecap, bless him, as a result of the bicycle accident. And he's like, what am I being invited to learn? And this is what he realizes. He realizes it's really important to focus on what I want to create. It's really important if I want to create. So I'll give you an example. Because the Buddha says, be aware and choose wisely. If you are that doctor and you're about to go on vacation to the same place that you went, and the last time you went and you were 16 and you broke your glasses, what you would instantly do is say, thank you for the divine wholeness of my glasses, or something like that. I really respect and appreciate the divine wholeness of my glasses. And that would sort of counterbalance your awareness of what had happened previously, you would have awareness and you would be energizing practically and positively what it is that you hoped to create. And that's what that crossing guard was doing. She had absolute awareness. She was totally vigilant. Like, I drove through. Her awareness was like a force field. And I drove through her awareness. I was like, whoa! Like, I just drove through this force field. And this is like ordinary woman in daily life. Her energy is a force field. And the doctor too. Like, that's just an example. A force field of energy is operating through each of us and through every human on the planet. And so that's so powerful. So I'm going to give you an exciting and positive example of the doctor allowing this force field of energy, same doctor, to operate through him in a really helpful way. And so this is just, he became aware, I don't even think it was his patient. I think it was he knew the person whose granddaughter had had this happen. So she was at school, and they thought she had been chewing on this red cap for a ballpoint pen, and then she accidentally swallowed it. So at school they said, well, drink some water. And they thought that it had gone down. They thought that everything was okay. But this doctor, the same one that I told you about, he kept having this feeling that something wasn't right with her right lung. He kept having this feeling that her right lung needed to be checked out. And he trusted his feeling. And so he said, I really think you need to get this checked out. So he told this to the mom and the grandma, and then they were like that crossing guard. They were like on it. They were completely vigilant. And so they ended up getting an x-ray. The x-ray didn't show anything, but the mom and the grandma were not going to let this go. And so they said, we really need to get this checked out. So they did something called a bronchoscope. And indeed, the pen had been so chewed up that it had splintered, and it had gotten lodged. And it would have created severe health problems if they had not found it. And so that's an example of this doctor tuning in and allowing, I'll call it the universal field of awareness, to guide him. And can you imagine how much courage that takes? Like, they had already checked it out, thought that it was fine. And he had to say, I really think you need to look further into this. And so it also takes courage. It takes vigilance, it takes awareness, it takes choosing wisely, and it takes courage as well. Strength, again and again and again, to tune in and to ask this force field of attention to energize through us and to connect with what is brightest and truest and most real and highest and best. And so I'm going to invite us to close our eyes and to directly feel this within ourselves. And so let's connect first of all with that awareness of the fact that it is possible for each of us to do what that crossing guard was doing. So the crossing guard was opening a corridor of light between her and the school. And through that corridor of light, those school kids were going to be able to safely walk home. And in some way, that's all that any of us ever are doing. We're inviting a corridor of light to open up, so that anyone who comes into contact with that corridor of light, whom we encounter, is able to walk home through that corridor of light. Every one of us, right where we are. And so allow yourself to feel directly within yourself. There is a force field of energy, a force field of consciousness and awareness within you. And it takes shape through what you focus on. So for the crossing guard, she was focusing on, I want these kids to be safe. So there was awareness, there was caring, there was vigilance, and there was this corridor of light open between her and the school. And so for yourself, first of all, just become aware of your own inner field of awareness. You might be experiencing it as a field of light. It is a field that is purely fresh. It is potentiality. It hasn't yet taken shape or form. And where we focus directs that force field of light, that field of light. And so now I'm going to invite you just to be aware in your daily life, as you move through your day, In what way are you already opening up a corridor of light? And who is included in that corridor of light? So for her, that was at her work, and it was the school kids who were included in her corridor of light. She had such a really beautiful force field. You just know that force field extended everywhere to everyone in her life. So her family would have been included in that field of light. Her ancestors would have been included in that field of light. Her neighbors would have been included in that field of light. Pretty much anyone she encountered would have been included in that field of light. And so for yourself, just notice, how does my very, very pure, potent, precious field of light include those with whom I work, my family, my ancestors, my neighbors, my community? Those whom I encounter, the world. And notice as well that when we connect consciously with this force field of light within ourselves, we are blessed also. Blessed is my word for it. If you like other words, we are strengthened, we are delighted, we are encouraged, we are nourished, we are inspired, we are engaged, we are generous, we are mighty, we're also healthfully in contact with humility. We have confidence and trust and a sense of inner security and poise and peace and possibility. And see if you can notice a couple of other things. It is possible to consciously invite this force field of light to share through you more potently, more purely, more wisely, with more good humor, more confidence than it has ever shared before. And just notice how you feel after you give yourself that inner permission. Amazing, thank you. And now notice as well that when we connect together in community with this force field of light that is present within each of us, it is possible to amplify in one another and in ourselves what is highest and best. And so I invite us to do that now. If you like, it's like turning up the volume on the force field of light that we're generating individually and as we meditate together. If you know a rheostat, like one of those light switches that you're able to turn up the light and the light becomes brighter, we're doing that right now. And so just notice how that feels. And this is always available, always, wherever we are. And now, notice that together, having collectively connected with and amplified that energy, it's possible to connect with that corridor of light and to invite that light to encircle the entire planet and to strengthen and energize that which is highest and best for the entire planet. And just notice how sweet that feels. And notice it is not a reach, because consciousness is already everywhere, and we are connecting with what I will call the limitless field of consciousness, the universal field of consciousness. And so before we close, I'm going to invite us to connect consciously with the limitless field of consciousness. And so this is like the crossing guard Between her and the school, there was a corridor of light. And her physical body and the school building were making that corridor of light visible. Now visualize that there's no boundaries, like the walls fall away from the school and the walls fall away from her physical embodiment, and there's only a universal field of light, strengthening what is highest and best. And just notice how it feels to let go of the feeling of being bounded, so that limitless light is able to share through you. And allow this limitless light to energize what is highest and best for you and for all. And this is abiding in the divine. This is surrender to the Supreme. This is letting your attention be in Brahman, letting yourself be in Brahman. This is what each of us is invited to connect with continually and ongoingly wherever we find ourselves, allowing this effortless, limitless joy and wisdom and kindness to be aware and choose wisely through us. And so I'm going to give us just a moment to notice how this feels. And then I'm going to invite us to place our hands in prayer, if you like, at the heart, and press your palms together. And now just notice, connecting with that feeling of your palms pressed together, connecting with the feeling of your feet on the earth. It is possible to be fully your own amazing, beautiful awareness and fully connected with limitless awareness, the pure energy of gladness and generosity, kindness and caring, presence, creativity, goodwill. It's probably not polite of me, so I won't whoop out loud, but inwardly I am definitely whooping out loud. Thank God, and God bless us all.